The massive viewing screen in Earth's diplomatic station hummed to life at exactly 14:00 Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Lee Mina had been expecting another routine council announcement, perhaps new trade regulations or territorial disputes between distant worlds. Instead, what appeared before her made her blood run cold. 50,000 Zilani beings stood in perfect formation across the dusty surface of Kepler-7's third moon. Their scales caught the pale light of the dying star, creating an almost beautiful pattern across the barren landscape. Each Zilani stood upright on their powerful hind legs, their elongated heads held high with dignity that seemed almost human in its quiet courage. Children clung to their parents, elderly ones supported by younger family members, yet none showed panic or desperation. By the authority of the Galactic Council and the Biological Hierarchy Committee, the mechanical voice of Council Speaker Vorthak echoed through translation systems across 10,000 worlds. Genetic Cleansing Protocol 77 Alpha is now initiated. Ambassador Mina's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering on the polished floor. Around her, the diplomatic station staff froze at their workstations. Dr. Park Jiho, Earth's chief xenobiologist, dropped his data pad as the horrifying reality sank in. The Zilani species, Vorthak continued with the same emotionless tone he might use to discuss weather patterns, has been classified as evolutionarily inadequate for continued galactic citizenship. Their genetic markers indicate inferior cognitive development, limited technological advancement, and biological incompatibility with standard galactic society. The camera drones circled the assembled Zilani like metallic vultures. Some of the reptilian beings reached out to touch their neighbors, offering comfort in their final moments. A young Zilani child, no more than 10 cycles old, looked directly into one of the cameras with large, intelligent eyes that seemed to ask why this was happening. "This is insane," whispered Communications Officer Song Hyun, her hands shaking. As she tried to maintain the diplomatic channel connections, "They're just standing there, they're not fighting back." Dr. Park moved closer to the screen, his scientific mind struggling to process what his heart already understood. "Look at their formation," he said quietly. "It's not random, they've arranged themselves by family groups, parents protecting children, elders at the center. This isn't the behavior of an inferior species. Across the galaxy, billions of beings, watched with the casual interest, they might show a weather report." The Krillian Empire's viewing centers buzzed with normal conversation. On Hexaron Prime, citizens continued their daily shopping while the execution played on public screens. The mighty Vorthak Confederacy's military academies used the broadcast as a training exercise in proper formation discipline. Only Earth's diplomatic stations showed horror and outrage. The energy cannons materialized from the moon's surface, like deadly flowers blooming in fast motion. Sleek, silver weapons platforms that had been hidden beneath the dust now rose on mechanical stems, their targeting systems painting red dots across the assembled Zilani. Each platform was the size of a small spacecraft, bristling with enough firepower to level a city. "Beginning systematic elimination," announced the automated execution system. Estimated completion time, 14 minutes, 37 seconds. The first volley of plasma beams struck the outermost ring of Zilani. The energy weapons were precisely calibrated, designed to cause instant death without damaging the surrounding area. Row by row, the peaceful beings simply ceased to exist, their forms dissolving into particles that scattered in the thin atmosphere. Ambassador Mina pressed her hands against the viewing screen, her reflection overlapping with the nightmare unfolding before her. "Stop this," she whispered, then shouted at the communication system, "Stop this madness." But her transmission channel had been locked to receive only. Across the galaxy, no species was permitted to interfere with Council justice. The execution continued with mechanical precision. A Zilani elder, his scales worn smooth by age, stepped forward from his family group and faced the nearest camera. In broken galactic standard, he spoke words that would echo through history. "We forgive you for not understanding. We lived with honor. We die with peace." Dr. Park's scientific instruments detected something the Council's sensors had missed. "Mina, look at this," he said urgently, pointing to his quantum resonance scanner. Their neural activity is off the charts. These aren't primitive beings. Their brain patterns show higher cognitive function than half the council species. The seventh volley eliminated the cluster containing the elderly Zelani who had spoken. By the 10th volley, only children remained in the center of the formation. They held hands, forming a small circle, their young voices rising in what sounded like a lullaby their parents had taught them. When the 14th and final volley silenced the last voice, the moon fell into absolute quiet. 50,000 lives extinguished in less than 15 minutes. The weapons platforms retracted into the surface, leaving only empty dust and the fading echo of that final song. Council Speaker Vorthak's image appeared on screen, his insectoid, features showing no emotion. Genetic Cleansing Protocol 77 Alpha completed successfully. All galactic citizens are reminded that biological hierarchy maintains cosmic order. Species not meeting minimum evolutionary standards will face similar correction. Ambassador Lee Mina stood slowly, her entire body trembling with rage that seemed to burn from her very soul. Around her, every human in the diplomatic station wore the same expression of barely controlled fury. They had just witnessed the coldest, most calculated genocide in galactic history. Presented as routine pest control, the galaxy had no idea that they had just awakened something far more dangerous than any inferior species. They had awakened human justice. The transport shuttle, Busan, cut through the void toward the Council's massive space station like a silver blade. Ambassador Lee Mina sat in the passenger compartment, her hands folded calmly in her lap, but her eyes burned with cold determination. Beside her, Admiral Kim Tae-yang checked his ceremonial uniform one final time, the fabric crisp and bearing the insignia of Earth's United Forces. "Ambassador," said Legal Counsel Park Jin-seo, reviewing his holographic files one last time, "the Council has never been formally challenged in their 10,000-year history. They view themselves as untouchable gods." Mina's voice was steady as steel. "Then today they learn that gods can bleed." The Council station grew larger in the viewscreen, a massive ring structure that could house entire cities. Crystalline spires jutted from its surface like frozen lightning, each one representing a different member species of the galactic government. At the center, the Council chambers themselves rotated slowly, a sphere of polished metal that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Dr. Lee Soo-young, Earth's foremost expert on galactic law, pulled up the latest intelligence reports. The Vorthak delegation arrived 6 hours ago with a full battle escort. The Krillian Empire sent their war priests. They're taking this seriously. Admiral Kim's jaw tightened. Good. They should be afraid. The docking sequence engaged with mechanical precision, magnetic clamps securing the human shuttle to the station's diplomatic bay. As they disembarked, alien security personnel watched them with barely concealed contempt. Towering Hexaron guards, their exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial lights, flanked the entrance. Their compound eyes tracked every movement of the human delegation. The corridors of the Council station stretched for kilometers, lined with monuments to galactic civilization. Holographic displays showed the progress achieved under Council rule. Worlds transformed, species elevated or eliminated, the march of evolutionary perfection. Ambassador Mina walked past them without a glance, her focus entirely on the massive doors ahead. The Council chambers were a marvel of engineering and intimidation. The circular arena could hold representatives from 10,000 worlds, with seating arranged in concentric rings that rose toward a transparent dome showing the stars beyond. At the center sat the Council itself, 12 beings from the galaxy's most powerful species, their forms ranging from crystalline energy beings to massive insectoid creatures. Every seat in the chamber was filled. Word had spread across the galaxy that the young human species was making some kind of dramatic gesture. Most delegates expected entertainment, perhaps a passionate but ultimately pointless speech, before the humans were put in their place. Ambassador Mina's heels clicked against the polished floor as she walked to the center of the arena. The chambers. Acoustics were perfect. Every whisper, every breath, every heartbeat could be heard by all present. She stopped directly before Council Speaker Vorthak, whose mantis-like form towered above her from his elevated platform. The translation system activated with a soft chime, ensuring her words would be understood by every species present. Mina's voice carried clearly through the vast space, each word precisely chosen and delivered with unwavering conviction. The United Earth Federation formally charges this council with genocide and crimes against sapient life. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the chamber erupted in what could only be described as amused disbelief. Delegates from 100 different worlds began chattering in their native languages, the translation system struggling to keep up with the chaos. Some species produced sounds like grinding metal, others chirped like electronic birds, but the message was universal. Laughter. Council speaker. Vorthak's mandibles clicked together rhythmically, the Nexari equivalent of laughter. His compound eyes glittered with what might have been humor or contempt. Your species has been citizens for barely 50 years, humans. You understand nothing of galactic governance, cosmic law, or the responsibilities of true leadership. Thasio. Krillian war priest Thexelar rose from his seat, his forearms gesturing dramatically. The humans speak of crimes, they who still wage war among themselves on their single primitive world? Admiral Kim stepped forward, and something in his bearing made the laughter begin to fade. He had the look of a professional soldier who had seen real combat, not the ceremonial conflicts that most galactic species experienced. His uniform bore decorations that, while alien to most delegates, clearly indicated a warrior who had earned his rank through blood and sacrifice. "We understand murder," the Admiral said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We've spent 3 days documenting everything about the Zelani, their art, their literature, their scientific achievements, their complex social structures. We have proof of their intelligence, their culture, their absolute right to exist." He activated a holographic projector that filled the chamber's center with images, Zelani poetry, translated into galactic standard, their mathematical theorems, their music, their family structures. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "You will stand trial for what you've done," Kim concluded. Vorthak's laughter was harsh like the sound of breaking glass. "Trial? In 10 millennia of council rule, we have eliminated 47 species deemed unsuitable for galactic citizenship. The Zelani were simply the latest necessary correction. You will withdraw these absurd charges within 72 hours, or Earth will join them in extinction." The threat hung in the air like poison. Around the chamber, delegates leaned forward, expecting the humans to back down as every other species had when faced with the Council's ultimate weapon, complete annihilation. Instead, Ambassador Mina smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Council Speaker Vorthak," she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, yet somehow carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. "You've made a fundamental error in your calculations." The chamber fell silent again, this time with tension rather than amusement. "You assume we're like the other species you've bullied into submission. You think we'll bow and scrape and beg for mercy like frightened children." Mina's eyes swept across the assembled delegates, meeting their alien gazes without flinching. "But you've forgotten something important about humanity." She paused, letting the moment stretch. "We evolved on a death world, while your species developed in comfort and safety. Humans survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, and each other. We didn't reach the stars because we were the smartest or strongest species on Earth. We reached them because we were the only ones stubborn enough to refuse extinction." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. "So yes, Council Speaker, you can try to destroy Earth. But first you'll discover exactly why humans survived when everything else on our world died. You'll learn what happens when you threaten our family." The challenge was unmistakable, and every being in the chamber understood that something fundamental had just changed in the balance of galactic power. The first sign that something had changed came at exactly 18 Galactic Standard Time. On the bustling trade world of Nexus Prime, shoppers in the central marketplace stopped mid-conversation as every holographic advertisement flickered and died. Street vendors hawking exotic foods from a dozen worlds looked up in confusion as their payment terminals went dark. Then, simultaneously, every screen across the planet blazed to life with the same image. President Choi Soo-jin sat behind her desk in the Blue House on Earth, her expression calm, but her eyes burning with determination. The Korean flag hung behind her, but flanking it were holographic displays showing technological marvels that made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look like children playing with toys. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice translated into over 3,000 languages simultaneously. "I am President Choi Soo-jin of the United Earth Federation. Today you witness the end of 10,000 years of tyranny. Across the galaxy, beings froze in their daily activities. On the crystal cities of Vorthak Prime, the insectoid inhabitants chittered in alarm as their supposedly secure communication. Networks had been completely bypassed. In the underwater cities of Aquatica 7, the dolphin-like Cetari emerged from their meditation pools to witness something unprecedented, a single species broadcasting to the entire galaxy without council permission. For too long, President Choi continued, the Galactic Council has decided who lives and dies based on their twisted biological hierarchy. They have murdered entire civilizations, calling it genetic cleansing. They have enslaved worlds, calling it civilization. They have ruled through fear, calling it order. The holographic displays behind her shifted, revealing Earth's true technological capabilities. What the galaxy had dismissed as a primitive world revealed weapons that could crack planets, defensive systems that bent space itself, and artificial intelligences that made the Council's quantum computers look like ancient calculators. No more. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, a massive Morthan worker named Grix dropped his plasma cutter as the broadcast reached his people's underground labor camps. The Morthan had been enslaved for 8 centuries, their powerful bodies used to extract rare minerals from hostile worlds. Their elephant-like trunks trembled as they witnessed humanity's technological displays. "By the ancestors," whispered Grix's cellmate Thorak, "look at those ships." The human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the massive, bulky vessels favored by most species, human warships were sleek predators, smaller, faster, and bristling with weapons that seemed to shift and adapt in real time. The flagship Sol hung in Earth's orbit like a metallic shark, its hull covered in what looked like living metal that rippled and flowed. "President Choi's," voice hardened as she continued, "the Council believes they are gods. Today they learn that gods can bleed. Humanity offers every enslaved species, every oppressed world, every being who has suffered under Council tyranny a simple choice. Stand with us, or watch as we tear down their empire alone." The broadcast revealed more than just weapons. Earth's adaptive AI networks were shown infiltrating Council systems in real time, their quantum learning algorithms solving alien encryption faster than the Council's best minds could create it. Self-replicating defensive platforms deployed from hidden asteroid bases, each one capable of producing copies of itself using raw space debris. On the gas giant Titan's largest moon, the Cathara resistance cell that had hidden for 3 centuries suddenly received activation codes they had never expected to use. Cell leader Zarath, her crystalline body glowing with excitement, turned to her fellow rebels. "The humans have done it," she whispered in amazement. "They've actually challenged the Council directly." Similar scenes played out across 100 worlds. The jellyfish-like inhabitants of Oceanus rose from their deepest trenches, their bioluminescent bodies pulsing with messages of rebellion. The silicon-based rocklings of asteroid belt Gamma began sabotaging Council mining operations with coordinated precision that spoke of long preparation. In Earth's command center beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Park Jaiho monitored a dozen holographic displays showing galactic reaction to their broadcast. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he tracked the enormous response their revelation had triggered. "Admiral Kim," he called out, his voice tight with urgency, "we're detecting massive fleet movements across Council space. The Vorthak Empire is mobilizing their entire battle group. The Krillian war fleets are breaking orbital patterns around their homeworlds. Sir, they're assembling everything they have." Admiral Kim stood before a 3-dimensional star map that showed the galaxy in real time. Red indicators marked hostile fleet movements, while blue dots represented potential allies. The math was sobering. Humanity faced odds of roughly 50,000 to 1. He turned to President Choi, who had just finished her historic broadcast. Madam President, we estimate the Council will have 12,000 capital ships within range of Sol system within the week. Their combined firepower could sterilize every planet in our solar system. Choi's expression didn't change. How many allies have responded to our call? 43 species have sent confirmation codes. Another 100 are maintaining communication silence but showing signs of internal rebellion. The Morthan slave uprising has spread to 60 worlds. The Kithara are hitting Council installations across their entire sector. Admiral Kim nodded grimly, his weathered face showing the determination that had carried humanity from the caves of Earth to the stars themselves. Let them come, Madam President. For 10,000 years the Council has ruled through fear because no one ever stood up to them. They've grown soft, comfortable in their superiority. He gestured to the holographic display showing Earth's defensive preparations. The planet was surrounded by weapons platforms that seemed to multiply even as they watched, each one connected to quantum-entangled networks that allowed instantaneous coordination across the entire system. They don't understand what they're facing, Kim continued. Every other species they've conquered developed on peaceful worlds. They never had to fight for survival the way we did. They never had to unite their entire planet against extinction. Dr. Park's instruments detected new signals, not from the approaching Council fleets, but from the rebellions spreading across the galaxy. Admiral, the resistance movements are coordinating their attacks. The Morthan have seized control of the dilithium mines on 7 worlds. The Kithara just destroyed the Council's primary communication hub in the Andromeda sector. Kim's smile was fierce. Then it's working. They're not just fighting the Council's fleets, they're fighting the entire system. President Choi moved to stand beside the Admiral, looking out at the star map where their enemies gathered like storm clouds. How long until they reach us? 6 days, Ma'am. Maybe 7 if the resistance movements slow their advance. Then we have 6 days to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human family, she said quietly. 6 days to prove that even gods can fall. Outside, Earth's orbital defenses continued their deadly dance, preparing for a battle that would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of every free being in the galaxy. The space around, Pluto shimmered like water disturbed by a stone, then tore apart in brilliant flashes of light. One by one, the Council's armada emerged from hyperspace, a sight that would have terrified any civilized world into immediate surrender. 12,000 warships representing 40 different species stretched across the outer solar system, like a metallic hurricane frozen in time. War Prime Gerzak stood on the bridge of his flagship Dominion, his massive Krillian form towering over tactical displays that showed the human solar system in perfect detail. His forearms moved across control surfaces with practiced efficiency, while his compound eyes analyzed every piece of data his sensors provided. Pathetic, he rumbled in his native tongue, which his translator rendered as contemptuous laughter. 9 planets, a few orbital stations and some scattered debris fields. This is what dares to challenge 10,000 years of Council rule. His fleet commanders, holograms projected from dozens of different ship types, murmured agreement. The mantis-like Vorthak Admiral clicked her mandibles in amusement. The crystalline Hexaran war leader pulsed with colors that indicated eager anticipation. Even the massive whale-like Sitari dreadnought captain sang harmonics of certain victory. Begin. Standard planetary subjugation protocol, Gerzak ordered. Eliminate their orbital defenses, then glass the 3rd planet. Make it slow enough that every world in the galaxy understands the price of defying the Council. The Armada began its advance toward the inner system, massive engines pushing ships the size of cities through the void. Their formation was perfect. A textbook example of overwhelming force, organized with mathematical precision. Each vessel had its assigned position, its specific target, its predetermined role in humanity's destruction. Then Sol system came alive with death. What the Council's sensors had dismissed as space debris suddenly revealed their true nature. Asteroid-sized, weapons platforms that had been drifting silently for decades, activated with synchronized precision. The mining equipment on hundreds of asteroids unfolded into plasma cannons that could punch through battleship armor. Defunct satellites that had been floating dead in space for years suddenly blazed to life, their solar panels revealing themselves as adaptive targeting systems. Lieutenant Han Yeji's voice cracked with excitement as she called out from her position on the bridge of the human flagship Incheon. "Contact! Enemy fleet detected at maximum sensor range. Sir, there are thousands of them." Admiral Kim Taeyang stood calmly at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the tactical display populate with red enemy markers. Around him, his crew worked with the deadly efficiency that only comes from training for a war you hope will never happen. "How many exactly, Lieutenant?" Kim asked, his voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they faced. 12,000 confirmed capital ships, sir. Another 50,000 support vessels. Admiral—" She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Sir, it's the largest military force in recorded galactic history." Kim nodded slowly, then turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to all human vessels. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every enslaved world, every murdered species, every being who has suffered under council tyranny. Our ancestors defended this world from tyrants before. Today, we defend the galaxy." The first wave of council ships entered the asteroid belt, expecting to sweep aside whatever primitive defenses the humans had managed to construct. Instead, they found themselves in a three-dimensional maze of death. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as space rocks opened fire with precision that should have been impossible, each shot calculated not just for maximum damage, but to exploit specific weaknesses in alien ship designs. War Prime Gerzak watched in growing alarm as his perfect formation began to disintegrate. The humans weren't fighting like any civilized species he had ever encountered. There were no formal battle lines, no predictable tactics, no adherence to accepted rules of engagement. Human ships darted through the asteroid field like deadly insects appearing from behind cover to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing again. "Report," he roared at his tactical officer. "Sir, we've lost 87 ships in the first engagement. The human weapons are adapting. They're learning our shield frequencies, our armor compositions, our structural weak points in real time." On the bridge of the Incheon, Dr. Lee Soo-young monitored the battle through quantum-linked sensors scattered throughout the solar system. Her artificial intelligence networks processed information faster than any organic mind could comprehend, identifying targets and coordinating attacks across millions of cubic kilometers of space. "Admiral," she called out, "the AI reports successful penetration of 17 different ship types. We now have complete technical specifications for 60% of their fleet." Kim smiled grimly. "Then it's time to show them what human warfare really looks like. All ships execute pattern Crazy Horse. What followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. Human tactics, born from millennia of warfare against their own species, proved utterly incomprehensible to aliens who had grown soft, conquering passive civilizations. Ships that should have retreated instead charged directly into enemy formations. Weapons platforms that appeared destroyed suddenly came back online, having used the explosion of their outer hull as camouflage for a tactical repositioning. The Vorthak Admiral found her command ship surrounded by what appeared to be debris, only to discover too late that the wreckage was actually a swarm of human attack drones, programmed to sacrifice themselves in kamikaze runs against her engines. Lieutenant Commander Park Jinwoo piloted his fighter, Gwangju, through a formation of Hexaran destroyers, his ship's hull scraping against alien armor as he threaded impossible gaps between their weapons. His targeting computer locked onto the command vessel's bridge, and he spoke quietly into his comm system. "For the Zelani," he whispered, then fired every weapon his small craft carried directly into the alien ship's control center. Across the galaxy, the impossible was happening. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found their courage as they watched humanity stand against overwhelming odds. On the mining world of Regulus IV, the elephant-like Morthan workers seized control of plasma drilling equipment and turned it against their Krillian overseers. The crystalline Kithara emerged from hiding places they had maintained for 300 years, their bodies blazing with energy as they struck at council installations. The whale-song communications of the Citari carried messages of rebellion across the galactic ocean, coordinating resistance movements on worlds the Council thought were completely pacified. Even the insectoid Nexari, supposedly loyal Council, members began experiencing equipment failures that crippled their ability to respond to the spreading uprising. War Prime Gerzak felt his certainty cracking like ice under pressure as reports flooded in from across Council space. The humans had done more than just challenge the Council's military might. They had inspired something far more dangerous. Hope. Sir, his communications officer reported, her voice shaking. We're receiving reports of simultaneous uprisings on over 200 worlds. The resistance movements are coordinating their attacks with our fleet positions. Every time we advance, they strike at our supply lines. On Earth's surface, President Choi Soo-jin watched the battle unfold from her command bunker deep beneath Seoul. The walls around her showed real-time feeds from across the galaxy, humans fighting desperately in space, while their example ignited rebellions on distant worlds. Admiral Kim, she said through the quantum communication link, the whole galaxy is watching. Win or lose, we've already changed everything. Kim's voice came back steady, despite the chaos of battle surrounding him. Then let's make sure we win. Madam President, for Earth, for the Zalani, and for every being who dreams of freedom. The siege of Sol had become something neither side had expected. Not just a battle for one solar system, but a war for the soul of galactic civilization itself. While the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity held off the largest armada in galactic history, a single stealth ship slipped through hyperspace toward the Council's seat of power. The Shadow of Busan was unlike any vessel in the human fleet. Built specifically for infiltration, its hull absorbed sensor waves like a black hole devours light. Ambassador Lee Mina sat in the cramped passenger compartment alongside 6 of Earth's most elite Special Forces operators. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were members of the Ghost Division, men and women who had trained for scenarios that most humans couldn't even imagine. Their leader, Captain Yoon Dae-ho, checked his equipment one final time, weapons that could penetrate alien armor, devices that could hack Council security systems, and neural disruptors that could incapacitate beings whose biology Earth's scientists had studied for decades. 2 minutes to target, announced Pilot Lieutenant Song Min-jung from the cockpit. Centris Prime coming into visual range, the Council's capital world was a monument to their 10,000-year reign. Massive crystal spires reached toward the stars, each one representing a different conquered civilization. The planet's surface had been completely terraformed, with floating cities that housed billions of beings from across the galaxy. At the center of it all stood the Apex Tower, a structure so tall it pierced the atmosphere, its peak disappearing into space itself. There, Mina pointed to their target. The Council's private chambers are located in the zero-gravity section at the tower's apex. While they're busy coordinating the attack on Sol, they won't expect anyone to come for them directly. The stealth ship docked with the tower's emergency port, a maintenance access that Council security had deemed unnecessary to guard heavily. After all, who would be foolish enough to attack the heart of galactic power itself? Captain Yoon's team moved through the corridors like ghosts, their advanced suits rendering them nearly invisible to the tower's security systems. The technology was beyond anything the Council had ever encountered. Quantum camouflage that bent light around their bodies, sound dampeners that absorbed even their heartbeats, and neural scramblers that confused the enhanced senses of alien security personnel. They passed through chambers filled with the stolen treasures of dead civilizations. Art from species that had been genetically cleansed centuries ago, scientific achievements from races whose only crime had been developing differently than the Council approved. The sight strengthened their resolve. The Council chambers themselves were a marvel of engineering, a vast spherical room where 12 beings from different species floated in zero gravity, connected to holographic displays showing the battle for Seoul. Their forms were as diverse as the galaxy itself, the mantis-like Vorthak speaker, a crystalline energy being from Nexus Prime, A massive tentacled creature from the deep ocean worlds. Impossible, Speaker Vorthak was saying, his mandibles clicking with frustration. How are these primitive humans holding off our entire armada? Their tactics make no sense. They fight like animals, not civilized beings. The crystal being pulsed with angry red light. Perhaps we underestimated them. Their technology appears more advanced than our intelligence suggested. It matters not, rumbled the tentacled council member, its voice like grinding stone. We have reserves. We can commit every ship in council space if necessary. These humans will learn their place. That's when Captain Yoon and his team struck. The attack was over in seconds. Neural disruptors fired simultaneously, sending precisely calibrated energy pulses that overwhelmed each species' nervous system without causing permanent damage. One by one, the most powerful beings in the galaxy collapsed, their enhanced forms no match for human ingenuity and preparation. Ambassador Mina floated into the chamber as the Special Forces team secured the area. Council of the Galactic Hierarchy, she announced formally. You are under arrest for crimes against sapient life, genocide, and 10,000 years of tyrannical rule. Speaker Vorthak's compound eyes focused on her with hatred. You cannot. This is impossible. No species has ever been willing to sacrifice everything for justice, Mina replied calmly. Until now. The trial began immediately, broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy. The same systems that had shown the Zelani execution now carried humanity's courtroom to billions of beings who had never imagined their oppressors could be held accountable. Mina stood before the captured council members, now secured in energy restraints designed specifically for each species. Behind her, holographic displays showed evidence that Earth's intelligence services had been gathering for 50 years. Documentation of genocide after genocide, species after species, eliminated for the Council's vision of genetic perfection. The Calanthe, she began, her voice carrying across the galaxy. Eliminated in Council Year 8847 for excessive emotional responses. Population 14 million. Crime. They composed music that the Council found evolutionarily regressive. Images filled the holographic displays, Calanthe cities before their destruction, their art, their children. Species across the galaxy who had never heard of them now witnessed their loss. The Morphic Collective. Eliminated in Council Year 9203 for unstable genetic expression. Population 37 million. Crime. Their ability to change their physical form was deemed chaotic influence on galactic order. The list continued for hours. 47 species, each one documented, each one mourned. The Zelani had been merely the latest victims in a campaign of extermination that spanned millennia. When Admiral Kim arrived from the battle at Sol, now won through humanity's impossible stand, he took his position as judge. His uniform was scorched from combat, his face bearing the marks of a commander who had led from the front lines. Speaker Vorthak's final words were defiant. You cannot judge gods, human. We have guided galactic evolution for 10,000 years. We have eliminated the weak, elevated the strong, brought order to chaos. You are nothing but primitives playing at civilization. Admiral Kim's response was quiet, but carried to every corner of the galaxy. Watch us. The executions were carried out using the Council's own methods, the same energy weapons that had killed the Zelani, the same cold efficiency they had used, to eliminate species after species. But unlike the Council's victims, these beings had been given a trial, evidence, the chance to defend themselves. Justice, not murder. As each Council member fell, something extraordinary happened across the galaxy. On worlds that had lived in fear for centuries, beings stepped out of their homes and looked up at the stars. The Morthan workers on mining worlds sang songs their ancestors had composed before their enslavement. The crystalline Kythera blazed with colors that hadn't been seen for 300 years. Even the dolphin-like Sitari emerged from their deep ocean cities to breach the surface and sing to the stars. Dr. Park Jiho stood beside President Choi as they addressed the galaxy one final time from Earth's surface. Behind them, the blue marble of humanity's homeworld turned slowly in space. no longer alone in its defiance of tyranny. "Today begins a new era," President Choi announced, her words reaching every inhabited world simultaneously. "The Galactic Democratic Assembly will represent all species equally, with representation based not on military might or technological superiority, but on the simple principle that all sentient life has value." She paused, looking directly into the camera that carried her image across the galaxy. "We establish one simple rule that will govern our new civilization. Never again will sentient life be deemed expendable."